In this episode, we're going to be talking with Samantha Edwards. Samantha is the creator of New Breed Meats, a vegan meat substitute, and is in negotiations with a company to produce on a larger scale. She became interested in producing vegan meat substitutes when she saw several secular companies encroaching on this market in recent years, like Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger, and many others. Samantha wondered why Adventists, who have known for years the health message, have not been leaders in this market space, so she took it upon herself to create a product that would appeal to many transitioning from meat-based diets to plant-based diets. I'm your host, Dylan Flannery Valadez, and I'm joined by my student, Abigail Cornelius. Samantha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Great. So, Samantha, I'm really excited to have you here on this episode because it's just so interesting for an Adventist to try to be breaking into this market where I see so many, like, the big boys out there, like Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see you do that, and I think it's going to be inspiration as we hear more of your story to others who want to do something like this. So, I don't know. So, Samantha, can you just kind of walk us through how you become Adventist? How does Samantha Edwards become Adventist?
Yeah, well, funny enough, so my story, one, I didn't grow up Adventist by any means. I actually grew up Catholic, so it was a far cry from Adventism. But the Lord allowed me to come in contact with certain individuals in the Protestant realm. And I started as a youth. I was, I guess, about 13 years old. I started attending this Pentecostal church, which was a very interesting experience. It was leaps and bounds away from Roman Catholicism. And it was funny because when I first started going to the church, at first I thought that, one, I was just shocked. I didn't know what was going on. People were jumping around and speaking in tongues, and it was all these animated things going on all at the same time. And at first, sadly enough, I thought it was comical initially. But I kept going. There was a large youth group there, and just really got engaged with some of the young people there and just kept going. But interestingly enough, it was actually in that church that I actually began reading and studying the Bible and just became engulfed in religion and anything to do with God and Jesus. And I was just so excited about the fact that I had a Savior that died for me. And it just touched my heart to the core. And at this point, I guess I would say I was in middle school, heading into high school, and I just kind of carried that with me. I was the only Christian in my household. And then I found out about the Sabbath. I found out that,
Really?
I was actually a family member whom I didn't even realize at the time. She had a business that she was closed on Sabbaths. So she had a really nice beauty salon. And I noticed that she was closed on Saturdays. Of course, I didn't know anything about the Sabbath. So I would go on occasion, and in any way, just in conversation and in talking with a kind of a distant family member, became evident to me that they actually keep the Sabbath. And from there, we started doing Bible studies on the Sabbath because I was already sold on anything from the Bible. Okay. So whatever the Bible said, I was ready to do it. And
now, was this person Seventh-day Adventist? Or?
This person happened to be a Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay.
Again, had no idea. I'd never even heard of them. I was at this point in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
And we started studying the Bible, and I saw it so clear in the scriptures, the fact that we were called to keep the Sabbath holy and that the seventh day is a Sabbath. And so I was just so excited about this newfound truth. I went back to, at this point, I guess I was about 3 years into that Pentecostal church. And I went back to all my youth leaders and so on. And I said, hey, guys, we're missing something here. The seventh day is the Sabbath. And they're like, wait a minute.
And they loved it, right?
Who told you that? Where did you get this information from? I'm like, what do you mean? It's all throughout the Bible, starting from Genesis and all the way through, and Hebrews 4. I just did a whole really quick rundown. They're like, no, don't listen to those people. They're a cult. And I'm like, wait, what is a cult? Like, what? I'm just looking at the Bible. Are you able to give me some kind of scriptural evidence that what you're saying is contrary to what what the Bible is saying, and obviously they were never able to produce any kind of text. And fast forward, I saw that a decision needed to be made on my end, whether or not I was going to continue on with the First Day Church and the errors in that, or if I was going to follow what the Bible said. And by God's grace, I decided to follow what the Bible said, and I ended up getting baptized in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It was actually at this time when they used to do tent meetings in the cities. So it was a large tent meeting in Brooklyn somewhere, and I got baptized by one of the popular evangelists that came through, and been on this journey ever since. I decided, at this time I was college age. And I said, I was really excited about going to a Seventh-day Adventist school. And I was like, I need to find a Seventh-day Adventist college. And so I was, doing all this research to find out about which school was Seventh-day Adventist. And, of course, at this point, my parents were wondering what was going on. But I had become a vegetarian. And I was like, the schools are vegetarian? This is just perfect. So I was just fully immersed in the whole culture. And just really excited. And I'm going to AUC, Atlanta Union College, which of course no longer exists at this point in time. This was way back. I'm aging myself here, but yeah, the Lord has really blessed me since that point.
Awesome. And then you get married, right, to Narlin, who's actually working here and doing a lot for the school and other places too. So how did that all happen?
Yeah. So we actually met at that. Not that particular one that I got baptized in Brooklyn. Again, there was another tent meeting, and it was always in the summer time where, there would be these seasons of having tent meetings all over. And he was actually a Bible worker at one of those tent meetings, and I was just attending because it wasn't too far from my house. I would just kind of walk there in the evenings, and that's how we met. And I guess the rest is history. Yeah, we ended up getting married, so that was a blessing. We moved out of New York City. We ended up moving down to the southeast, to Atlanta, and we just started a new life in Atlanta. And
now you have a couple kids, right?
Yeah, well, we have Hannah.
You have one, okay.
So she's 5.
5, okay, great.
Yeah.
And so then how does your interest develop in health foods along the way?
Well,
Would you say it's because of being an Adventist? Or?
Absolutely. Again, just having never grown up Seventh-day Adventist, I can't say, and obviously I grew up eating meat, so that's all we knew just in the beginning. And what I guess I would say, when I found out about the diet, it was just something so new and novel, and I was just really excited to try it, and I did, and I never turned back. So again, I was in my teenage years, and about, I think it was 12 years ago, and, sometimes I get mixed up with my dates, but I actually ended up writing a cookbook called The Better Way Cookbook. So I have the cookbook. So
I actually bought it the other day.
Did you really? That's actually really funny. The Better Way Cookbook came as a result of my desire and love of the plant-based lifestyle, and really trying to help people to make that transition. So that's always been an interest of mine. I ended up finishing my degree is in business management and finance from school. So I actually do have a business degree. And I just got really involved in the health culture and plant-based living and the lifestyle, and teaching it and practicing it. And I just saw how lives are really changing. My husband and I, we started a ministry called Tree of Life Ministries, and this was in 2010. And we started this ministry as a medical missionary work, and just traveling and showing people how they could, how to live, really, God's plan. And through all of that, again, I was the one that was kind of taking on the nutrition classes, the cooking classes, and just going and just showing people. And I just saw the impact that it had on people, and how their lives would change. They would begin to adopt the principles that we were sharing. And, they'll come back months later, years later, and, they would tell me how much weight they lost, and how they no longer have, high blood pressure and so on. I mean, my mother had stage 4 breast cancer. And that was a big blow to the family. And her, I was telling her about her diet and the fact that, what she's doing is kind of feeding these cancers and so on. But, I didn't think she was paying me any mind. At this point, I was already moved out the house and, on my own. And she was still in New York. And I was telling her about it. And she actually began to make changes. And I visited her one time. I remember going back to New York and visiting her. And I noticed that, I opened the cabinet or the fridge or whatever, and I saw all these foods like Earth Balance, and I was like, wait, what is this? She completely changed everything about her whole life, and
wow, praise the Lord.
She became plant-based.
Good.
And subsequently, she is now cancer-free. I mean,
wow,
this is
amen.
I think this had to have been at least 14, 15 years ago, and she had stage 4. So
whoa.
I know the impact that this diet has on individuals once they really commit to it and put their minds to it.
Great. So that I can see how that you have a lot of personal experience with the health message, and seeing it firsthand have some great effects. So then how do you start? We were talking before the show about how about 3 years ago you started noticing this trend with vegan meat substitutes.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit about that development?
Sure. So again, just having been in this space for so long in terms of, me being just plant-based myself for well over 20 years. I mean, obviously in the days that we started, it was, eating soy and Eighth
right.
Continent and, all these, niche, things in the corner of the store. In fact, you had to go to your local co-op or health food store. It was nothing like what we're seeing today. So
when you started, these were the common meats.
Those were like the milks. So it wasn't even like meats. It was,
like the soy milks
maybe
and such.
Tofurkey. Yes, there was Tofurkey. That's what it was. So it was those types of things back in those days. Like you mentioned, about 3 years ago, we just, I just started seeing the shift in the minds of the people, and I just saw that it was this whole industry was becoming a lot more mainstream. And I was like, wow, then you had all these players coming up, your Beyonds and your Impossible. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
So, I was just blown away.
Yeah,
how
it's
it just kind of took, right.
Yeah.
It just literally took over. And I was like, this is so sad that here we are as Seventh-day Adventists. We had this health message since June 6, 1863 is when the first comprehensive vision of health reform was given to Sister White. And here we are where we should have been the head. Now we're at the tail. And, I said, something needs to be done. And I'm going to be the one to try to produce products that can actually compete in the market. So granted, we do have products as Seventh-day Adventists that are meat substitutes. But I felt that it never had the mainstream appeal as these newcomers coming on the scene had. And I wanted to see how we can kind of change that narrative.
New Breed Meats is helping to reform meat by pushing plants forward. Our line of premium plant-based meats have a better taste, better texture, and is better for you. We are also strongly mission-based with a portion of our proceeds going toward healthy living initiatives. Please learn more by visiting us at newbreedmeats.com.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about like the process of discovery? Because if I was going to make a vegan meat substitute, I have no idea what I do. I throw like some oats or some wheat. I don't know what I do in a blender, and then how does it go? How do you figure out a meat?
Yeah,
how did you figure out your new vegan meat?
Yeah, that's actually really funny. I remember actually just a couple of months back, I was meeting with someone in the industry, and he's not Adventist or anything, and I was giving him a sample of the product, and I said, here it goes. First thing he did was he turned around, he started reading the back of the label. He said, wait a minute. He was like, did you create this? And I was like, yeah, I made this. He was like, wait, I don't even understand how you made this. He said, these aren't your pantry staples. How did you just make this?
Yeah.
And honestly, it was the Lord. The Lord, I believe, definitely gives wisdom and knowledge. When Sister White talks about the work of Kellogg, she talks about how that the Lord would give skill and wisdom to create foods from out of the earth for substitutes of meat, and I know for a fact that that's what the Lord did for me. So I don't have a food science background, and definitely the products that we're putting out it begs for a food science degree. But through these last 3 years, you can say in R&D or research and development, I have, you can say, become a food scientist. I had to study the nature of proteins. I had to study fats and carbohydrates and just the core elements of what makes meat. And
Wow.
In studying that and the chemical compositions of all of these things with nitrogen and carbohydrates, it's very scientific. And I just became immersed in this whole study of meat. And how then can I replicate this in the plant kingdom, in the plant world? And through years of trial and error, R&D, getting raw material from various suppliers from all over the world, I was able to create this line of products called New Breed Meats. We called it New Breed Meats because we felt like the plants are the new breed, even though we know it's the original. But anyway, so plants are the new breed, and it is meat. You know, it's funny because Genesis 1 says, to you it shall be for meat.
Right,
you know?
right,
So I feel like we have the original meat, and that everything else, the animals are actually the second hand or that's not the original. But anyway, so yeah, I just basically became a food scientist. I, again, had to study into all of these things, reading technical papers, reading scientific reports, looking at what was coming in from the various universities in regards to denaturing proteins and so on. So it was just a lot of reading work and chemical and just putting it all together. So
I'm so amazed, like how you're doing this. You got,
Yeah.
a daughter, obviously, and you're reading scientific papers, basically getting a second degree in chemistry or something.
Correct. That is exactly what happened.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So how does it I kind of imagine you like Thomas Edison or something sitting there like with a lab coat on and like goggles,
Right.
like mixing things,
Funny,
trying
yeah.
1,000 times, and then finally you get it right. Like, what are some of the like breakthroughs along the way?
Yeah,
that?
I remember in the early days, we were, first of all, I had to, Linda Dom could tell you every day I was getting a number of things in the mail because I was ordering things like crazy. I ended up with things like the test tubes and those little fine needle type things, the droppers,
Yeah.
and scales. I mean, scale was a huge thing, and because it wasn't just a regular scale that I had to use. I had to find one that could measure to the 0.0001 degree,
Right.
because everything was just so specific. Color, all of that had to be fine tuned and measured out. So I remember I had to get like this special diamond scale that measures like grams. Just the smallest measurement, so I was all of that. I was getting all of that and all kinds of material. So yeah, you can basically say the only thing I didn't have was the goggles, but I was, with the test tubes and everything else, I was pretty much your mad
So when did you
scientist.
feel like you had it? Like, this tastes good.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, other people are gonna like it.
Yeah.
How long ago was
so
that? Would you
that was 2019. So
Okay.
2019.
Really? So it took several years to get
Yeah,
this right.
it took at least, I would say, about a year and a half.
Okay.
And it's funny because it was always going through my mind because I would come up with the iteration of it. So everything has to be condensed down to a formula. And how it works in the food industry is you can't just say, oh, I'm going to use 1 cup of flour and 2 cups of milk. No. So I'm going to use 3.02% of sunflower oil, and so it's very specific. And so I think that 2019 is when we felt like we had a product that at least could be tested in the market, and we did that. We said, okay, we have this product, so how are we going to launch it? So there was an upcoming ASI. that year, a national ASI. I think it was in Louisville, Kentucky, actually. And we said, well, why don't, we felt like it was a safe place, Venice, we could just launch it there, kind of get, real-time feedback from consumers. And that's what we did. We ended up getting a booth, had all of our branding done. Oh, the branding and creative is a whole nother story. But we did all of that and had materials for handing out. We had feedback cards so we can get real-time feedback from people. And, we made, I think, about 1,000 pounds, or actually, I can't remember exactly how much.
1,000 pounds.
It was a good amount of pounds. Wow. It took us a long time to make that batch, and we were just preparing it to go to ASI because we were going to do samples, and that's what we did. So we created all this food, and then we sent samples. We had the samples ready at the table, and it just went crazy.
Really?
I mean, people just responded. It was so overwhelming. Our booth at ASI was literally, it was wrapped around the corner. The line was insane. Huh. And it was the most popular booth. And so every time someone would come up to the table, they're like, this is where the smell was coming from. I was wondering where it was. And I finally found you. And, people were fighting. They're like, some people would skip the line and whatever. I remember one time this little boy, I don't know, he was like 7 or something. Some way he found himself to the front. Oh, they chewed him out. They was like, no, the line starts here. And then I'm like, okay. So people were going crazy with this new breed. So we were like, okay, I think we're onto something.
Good. Yeah. Awesome. So how did you sell out or?
Yeah. So we actually were just doing sampling that day. So yeah, it was gone. In no time. People were begging us, to sell it to them and so on. And we're like, well, it's just for sampling. But I think we ended up selling some of it and some of the raw because the product comes in a raw form. And we're like, well, it's not cooked and you're in a hotel. How are you going to keep it? Oh, don't worry about that. I was like, okay. So anyway, it was people were just wanting to get their hands on it.
Good. So you notice that you have something at that point. And then what comes next? So
then from there, there's a lot of back-end things that needs to take place, obviously, even prior to that point, liability insurance, so having to kind of navigate through that, navigating through other type of things as it relates to just building out the supply chain. So, for example, I can't just go down to Costco and say I'm going to just get these ingredients. No, it's very specialty type ingredients, and so we have to go through audited ingredient suppliers, and they send things by the pallet. So this is not just your average, I'm gonna run down to whatever. So just kind of figuring out and establishing those types of relationships with the suppliers, which are the raw material ingredient suppliers. So that needed to be built out. That takes some time to establish, and then from there, you're thinking about, manufacturing. How are you gonna get this thing from, just making, 100-pound batch to, a 10,000-pound batch. So then it definitely, you have to then start. We initially were thinking about just taking on the manufacturing on our own. But, having a child, I'm homeschooling her, and, we travel for ministry. So I was like, well, this clearly is not going to work. And so then it became evident that we needed to actually source a manufacturing partner to be able to produce these products at scale. And that's what we had to end up doing, was finding someone, not just any partner, because the product that we're making is so unique, and it requires its own type of machinery in order to really be able to produce it. We had to be very selective about where we were going to go and who. Because you have to have machinery not only for the processing of the product, the mixing and so on, but also for the packaging aspect of it too. Because everything is just so unique. Roll stock machines and thermofilm. Are you going to do tray seal and overlap with the labels, and everything is this high tech machinery. And if we were to have built out that facility, it would have definitely been at least $3 to $6 million.
Oh man!
And so we said, we're a young brand, we're trying, so let's just find a partner that can actually kind of do those things for us, and we can kind of focus on sales and marketing.
Okay, so you've kind of gone from like just kitchen, like something that you could do kind of
Yeah.
in a bigger kitchen, like
Yeah,
here
yeah.
at Weimar, right? Isn't that
Yeah,
where you
so
were?
I actually started in my actual kitchen, and if
Okay.
anyone has ever been to my apartment at Weimar, they would know that my kitchen is probably smaller than this room.
No way.
I'm dead serious.
And we're in,
After
like,
the
a
show, we can go up
6x10
there.
room
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, it's super small. So
my
it's funny that's where it all started. It started in that little kitchen there, and then we graduated to the Weimar commercial kitchen, and on off hours, I'll be working overnight, just trying to get these products produced and packaged and just ready for sales and sampling.
So
and
it's gone from like there to like now a much larger scale where you're going to be probably
Yes.
producing, I don't know, on what
Yeah.
volumes are we talking about?
Yeah, so it went from that, and so our current manufacturing partner that likely we'll engage with, they have really no capacity issue. They're ready to go whenever we are. They can produce 1 million pounds a week.
Whoa,
So
that's good.
I mean, you're talking about, this is major.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you imagine that could be your guys' future? Would there be a buyer for that?
So, you mean like for the business itself, or
Well, like,
for the
how does it
actual
go
products?
From ramping up
Sure,
to like
yeah.
1 million pounds a week or something
Yeah,
to like compete
so-
with like these Impossible?
Oh
or
yeah,
Beyond?
absolutely. Yeah, so the first step wouldn't necessarily be to produce on that large of a scale. So there are kind of a lot of in-between steps. So for example, yes, we know that we can create products at really any capacity, so that's not really the issue, which normally is an issue, because let's say Walmart calls you, okay,
Yeah,
well, how am I going
I
to
know.
produce for? So it's
no idea.
crazy. So it takes developing partnerships with distributors. So in the food world, if I'm walking into Whole Foods and I see all these brands of food, it didn't just show up there. So and each individual company didn't just mail their packages to a Whole Foods. They work with different distributors, and the distributors pretty much act as that middleman between the manufacturer, which we are, and the end retailer. And so you kind of work with these distributors, which there are several key distributors in the natural food space and also mainstream space, and they're the ones that kind of ship it out to the store. So they have their own logistical line where, they have their own warehousing. So basically, we'll send pallets to the distributor. They hold product, they buy the product, and then they send it off to their customers, which are the retailers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah, that needs to be done. And then we start seeing it on shelf. And then when it's on shelf, that's a whole nother ball game, because now you're thinking about, promotions and free fills and how is it actually going to, move from the shelf into the hands of the customer. So there's a lot of marketing that needs to be targeted to those specific areas to ensure that the product actually moves.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from what I understood, you're not exactly sure what store this would end up in at this point.
Well, we have some Target stores. So the way
Uh-huh.
that we're actually going to roll it out is not necessarily on a national scale, because we will want to take some quite a bit of resources in order to be able to do a national rollout. And because we're still a young brand, we do want to build up some brand awareness. We are concerning our efforts into just one region and just kind of dominating in that one region first. Getting some good traction going, and then kind of building out from that point. We just
Okay.
felt like that was a better use of funds.
So where do you think we could see it?
Yeah,
if we-
well, it definitely will be here at Weimar, so
Okay.
that's for sure. But actually, our first region that we're actually going to roll it out is actually in the Southeast.
Okay.
It's an up and
So
coming.
like Texas? Is that-
More like the Atlanta
Okay,
market, yeah, and that there's reasonings behind that. They have a growing plant-based scene there. A lot of restaurants kind of popping up that's doing, just really, really well.
Huh. I wouldn't necessarily think of the South as
Exactly.
like a market for
That's
vegan
why
meat substitutes.
this is great.
Huh.
The world is changing at
Interesting.
leaps and bounds. So it's really exciting to see, because obviously you know that these products dominate on the West Coast. And we just felt like, okay,
The market's saturated, like,
super saturated.
okay.
And we said, you know what? We need to be able to do something completely different from what everybody else is doing. We're going in the Southeast. no one is there. And we just felt like, and they also have a large African-American presence as well, too.
Huh.
And we just feel like we are able to really authentically engage with that audience profile. And we just felt like this would be just a really great start to kind of get the product going and just kind of branching off from there.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Now, kind of a different question. I've had a few Impossible Burgers and Beyond Burgers in my day, and they're good. How does your what have people said about? Because I haven't actually been able to try yours yet.
Right.
What do people say about your burger or it's burger, right? Burger and
we have burgers,
chicken
grounds,
and
right? Yeah.
a lot of different things.
Yeah, sure.
How do people say it tastes or?
Yeah, and that's the main thing. We definitely drive with taste. So I was very intentional about ensuring that the taste profile is on point and it definitely is in line with what is currently out there. And from all the feedback that we were getting, we were actually featured in a lot of major publications. Everyone is saying the same thing, that the taste it's so good, and then the texture is just the right bite. It has a taste, it has a texture. And the great thing about what makes us unique is the fact that, one, we're a complete protein. So we're combining a combination. So the product is actually soy-free, gluten-free, and non-GMO.
Wow.
So in terms of how we differentiate from a Beyond standpoint, we are a complete protein. So it's a pea protein in combination with a brown rice protein. So when you combine the legume with the actual rice, it creates a complete protein. So we have that. So a lot of people are saying that they don't have any digestive issues when they're eating our product. So a lot of people have serious allergies and gut issues and so on. And I believe it's because of the high concentration of protein and it's not really balanced out. But because we actually scientifically balance out the proteins, people are not getting any kind of issues with their gut. So that's one. And two, they're not getting any off flavors either. So sometimes, there might be a chemical aftertaste with a lot of these other products and, it seems a little bit off, but no one is getting any of that. It's just like a clean taste. And then the great thing about it too is that it's actually up to 75% less saturated fat than everyone else on the market. So it's a healthier alternative, and yet still you're not sacrificing on the taste and the experience that you're looking for.
And that's a pretty good deal. So you've managed to beat, at least in your mind, you managed to beat these companies on the taste standpoint, which is very important, and also the health standpoint, which is probably huge.
Exactly, and that's the main thing, because the first thing that people want to know is, yes, we know we need to come off of meat, and they try, but they want something that's actually is healthier. And, between all of and then we're about 40% less ingredients as well. So we have a much leaner label. And then, again, it's healthier than what's currently out there.
Amazing. So I have another question, but I was just going to turn to my student that's in here with us and see if she had anything that she wanted to ask.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask you, who has really helped you most along the journey?
It's been a blessing because I was actually able to build up a team of mentors and advisors. And it's really been a blessing because, it can seem somewhat lonesome. No one understands what I'm saying. The average person. When I start kind of going over some of the
I've understood
textural
about 50%
issues.
of what you
said. So it's just like, okay, what am I going to do here? But, the Lord has blessed in that I was able to be connected with a lot of individuals that have found a lot of success in the food industry. And I'm talking about people that are not normally reachable. So the Lord has really opened the doors. One in particular, one of our mentors or advisors rather, runs a $2 billion with a B organization. This doesn't make sense. I'm in touch with the founder and the CEO. This is not normal. Right. It's a major brand. I can't say the brand, but it's a major brand. And they talk to me whenever I need to. And, I'm asking them questions, back in the day when you were in my shoes, how were you working out your co-packer relationships? And, we just kind of vibe and go. And he's like, and I remember the last email he sent me, he said, look, I don't need any money. I don't need any equity from you. I just want to help you. I was like, okay.
Wow, that's incredible.
Just things like that. And also other brands that really have been helpful. We just created this community of brands that I can reach out to and call on for whatever, whether it be fundraising. Or fundraising is another thing that I didn't even get into. Talking with investors. And now we're part of this accelerator program. We got accepted into this accelerator program just last week. Accelerator program is a program that takes young companies and they kind of groom them and shape them for entry into the market. And so we were selected this program out of New York City and Singapore. We are one of 8 companies that was selected out of hundreds.
Wow.
And we sent them samples and we sent them our pitch deck. Oh, pitch deck is another thing. It's so many different pieces.
What does that even mean?
What is a pitch deck? A pitch deck, okay, so basically as a business you need money. And you
Which would be a problem for most of us.
You need a lot of money. And so what the pitch deck is, it's sort of like a company overview of your milestones and your product and your founding team and what you're looking at, your problem and the solution that you're seeking to offer, and then how much money you're looking to raise. And just hoping that someone takes pity on you. No, I'm kidding. You present a really strong business business proposition, and then you send it out to different investors in the investor community, whether it be angels, whether it be VCs. VCs are venture capitalists.
There you go.
Venture capitalists, these are people that give really a large amount of money to young companies. You can think about the days of, Facebook and, all of these companies, Uber and all of these companies, they receive massive amounts of funding from VC firms, largely out in the Bay Area. So we're actually not too far from where they all are. These founders like me, they would just go and they pitch, these investors, and, they walk away with checks of $1 million, $500 million. It's this, large range. So anyway, so that's what the pitch deck is. You're just kind of, giving people a picture of what the business is like and kind of what the ask is. So I guess going back to my original point, having to create all of that to get funding, and then just, seeking to get funding, we got it with this accelerator group. And like I said, we were 1 out of 8 that has been selected, and we're going through the program now. It's a 5-month program. And we're just really excited about what doors will open from this point.
Offers 2 tracks, healthcare administration and organizational management, which are led by experienced professors and successful business leaders. If you long to bridge the gap between business and mission, go to www.weema.edu for more information.
I'd love to ask you, I know right now it's this is like a business that you guys have really gone along with, and I was just wondering how you see this as a ministry.
Yes, absolutely. Ministry is always first and foremost in my mind. First thing that we say is that we're building what we're calling a benevolent business. So it's not merely to, produce profits, which was what anyone would be in business for, but it's for a purpose. So profits with a purpose, you can say. So we already know that we are allocating 10% of our proceeds towards healthy living initiatives. And it's really to fund the health work that we're doing as a ministry. As I mentioned earlier in the program, my husband and I have been in full-time ministry for 12 years. And we see this as an extension of it. And really the reason why we started it is because we wanted to be truly self-supporting. There's a lot of talk about self-supporting work and so on. And I just feel like a lot of ministries that say that they're self-supporting, they're really largely dependent upon donors. And we wanted to really change that model. We didn't want to just, we have a ministry in Kentucky and other things that we're engaged in, but we didn't want to just be donor dependent. And so in order for you to kind of shy away from that model, you then have to create. So there's 3 main ways that a ministry can fund themselves, and that is obviously donors, and that's pretty obvious. But then there's also some kind of creation of products and services. And so we said, well, we need to create some kind of product and or service that we can put in the market that it actually is going to be saleable and people are actually going to buy, that can actually support the work of God. And so we're seeing this as an extension of that. And then too, as New Breed Meats, people are going to say, well, what is it? Why are you creating a plant-based meat company? Oh, well, because we have this health message, and let me tell you about that. And then so we're really using it kind of as that entering wedge. As people become more and more interested in their health and in their lifestyle, we want to be able to have that voice that can reach them and talk about, God's true way and eventually transition them even from these types of products to more of a whole foods plant-based diet. So we see it definitely as a transitionary type of thing, a way to reach people where they are, because obviously no one is going to go from maybe a steak to a millet loaf. Even though I eat millet loaves and stuff all the time, I don't have a problem. Like I said, I'm 20 years in, but it takes a training of the palate, you could say, in order to kind of get to that point. So that's how we see it intertwining with ministry.
Good. So hey, I have a follow-up question to you. So I'm thinking about people listening to this and they're like, you must be just like a super go-getter, you have like this business background. I don't know if I could ever do that. What would you say to like other Adventists that want to do something like you, that maybe they have an idea, but they don't know, well, how in the world am I going to get to producing 1 million pounds a week?
Yeah, I'm actually going to bring up a scripture because that's so important. I think that what God is looking for, from anything else, he wants our dedication and he wants our commitment. Ultimately, he wants us to give him our hearts. And the Bible talks about to every man his work. So everyone has a specific work that the Lord has called you to, and he will give you the wisdom and the insight that is needed to really carry out that work. But we need to ensure that we are listening to the voice of God and that he's the one moving and leading. So when I felt the prompt, it was very strong and heavy. I mean, I didn't just take it upon myself. Oh, yes, I'm going to create this. I didn't know what was going to become of it. It's just a couple years back. I said, wait, what are we doing? This is our message. And how did we just fall to the wayside? And one of the things that I wanted to bring out is Proverbs 22, verse 29. It says, seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men. And it's not mean as in rude men. It's mean as in insignificant or, kind of men. And the key here is a man diligent in his business. And I think that is so key. Also in the book Education, the chapter Business Principles and Methods, which I would encourage everyone to read, chapter 15 in the book Education, it says here, there is no branch of legitimate business for which the Bible does not afford an essential preparation. Its principles, and then she's going to list out these series of principles, its principles of diligence, honesty, thrift, temperance, and purity are the secret of true success. And so when you break down each one of those principles, diligence, am I doing all that I can to educate myself on whether it be this market or, this product or whatever. So we need to do our part to ensure that we're actually bringing something superior to the table. Again, we're called to be the head and not the tail. So I just feel like everything that we do as Seventh-day Adventists, as a people, should be superior. It shouldn't just look like you just threw it together. So just being diligent, honesty. It's funny because when we met with the manufacturing partners, they were talking about running the product on weekends. And the first thing I'm thinking about is a Sabbath. Yeah. Because I'm like, I don't want my product to be running on the Sabbath. So I told them specifically, I said, we actually would prefer if the product would be run on Sundays. And then he said, oh, on Sundays? We said, yes, on Sundays. He was like, okay, no problem. We will run your product on Sundays. I said, well, praise the Lord. That's perfect. So, you have to just be intentional about, following the Lord's commands in the Lord's way. And he will definitely bless. Thrift. When we started out, we didn't have much money to our name, but, the Lord blessed. We had a small investment just put in. And through that small investment, we were able to kind of get to where we were. So really having that thrift and economy, just ensuring that you're not wasteful, that you're using everything honorably. And so we were definitely doing that. And I just believe that through all of the efforts that, the Lord has placed upon our heart, we were able to kind of get to where we were. So I know that anyone that will, write out a plan and, ask the Lord if this is your will, and he will start putting the pieces together and provide you with everything that you need. And realistically, to have gotten to where we are in the business and product development and actually creating this line of products, I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars. I mean, people are paying, these companies, they have these large R&D labs. They have all these scientists working on specific things like color. You just have scientists that just work on color. You have scientists that just works on texture and sensory analysis and all of these things. And honestly, I did everything from the startup, and I did not have millions of dollars, and I still don't have millions of dollars. And we were able to create this product. I talked to this one girl, and she said, yeah, I got this product developed, and she had to pay $25,000 a month to this R&D lab to create that product. A month.
Yeah.
That's what we started out with for like 3 years. We didn't have anything more than that. So anyway, it just goes to show how the Lord provides.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast. We would like to thank today's guests for sharing their story, as well as our team of business students who made this podcast a reality. I am Gabriel Harrison, and I'll see you next time.